Hello everyone. Today we will be studying the end game. Some people play the end game like the middle game, but the like g4, g5, a king side attack, a queen side attack, but the end game doesn't work like that. In the end game, the general idea is to get the passed pawn, promote it, and then checkmate the king with the queen or rook or bishop or knight you promoted the pawn to. Take this position for example. It's white to move. Now we should have passed pawns to promote a pawn because the enemy pawn will take it. But in this position, white has no passed pawns. White only has a candidate pawn on a3. So we have to make that candidate pawn or the pawn near the candidate pawn a passed pawn. So how do we do that? By putting a rook behind the pawn. Now, black plays h5 because he thinks the endgame is just like the middle game. No, it's not like that. So now we push the pawns. Now we push b4 because the pawn on b7 blocks the pawn on a6 way. So the b4 pawn, although it can't do something now, has potential and can possibly, when the a3 and b7 pawns are exchanged, can be a passed pawn itself. Black plays g5. Now, since the more passed pawns the better, we play rook f5, threatening to capture a pawn. If the g pawn moves to g4, then white will capture h5, and if black moves his h5 pawn to h4, white will capture the pawn on g4. So the only defense black has is either bishop h6 or f6. f6 is generally the better one, so black plays f6. Now we will try to weaken black's pawn structure with h4 because black will have to take on h4 because if he doesn't, we will take and he will lose a pawn. So then we take on h5 and threaten taking h4. Rook e4, f3, rook f4, king h2. In the end game, the king is no longer vulnerable. So we should we should activate the king. And the king, the in the end game, the king is as strong as the knight or bishop. F5, king h3, bishop f6, rook h6. Now, bishop takes d4 since it's better than nothing, right? He gets a pawn. We also get a pawn. Black should generally not take on h4 since that will make our task easier, pushing the a3 pawn to a8 and promoting it. But black plays rook takes h4, then king takes h4, rook a8, king g5, attacking the f5 pawn, rook f8, defending the f5 pawn, a4, king g7. Black finally realizes it's in the end game. The king is not vulnerable, so it is time to get the king into action. But it's too late since white is blocking black from going forward. For fixing the f5 pawn where it is. Now, since black has no plan to do, he should make a threat of check, but, well, a skewer, because if white doesn't do anything, black will take the pawn on g2. White doesn't do anything about it since if rook g6, king takes f6, and white gets a new passed pawn because 2 is better than 1. Though g4 is even better than doing nothing. So white plays g4, rook g6 check. Instead of playing king h5 or king h4, play king takes f6. This is why g4 is better than other moves, because if what black does the skewer now, white takes black's pawn on f5 and defends white's pawn on g4 too. And if black plays f takes g4, white takes back and another passed pawn anyways. g5. White has two, two passed pawns now and one candidate pawn. White should focus on the G and F pawns now, since A4 is a candidate pawn and there is a very low ways to make it a passed pawn. So, Rook G1, King A7, King E5, Rook to G8. Black wants to use his candidate pawn on D5, F5, Rook D8, G6 check, King G7, F6 check, King F6, G7 check, King F7. Now we sacrifice White's G pawn in order to gain more. G8 equals queen check, Rook takes G8, Rook takes G8, King takes G8, King to E6, King F8, F7, King to G7, King E7, King G6. White promotes his queen. So now you see, Black didn't use the principles of the endgame, making the king active in the endgame, and he attacked White's king, which doesn't happen in the endgame at all. Instead of pushing his candidate pawn to promote it. So now White emerged victorious. The two principles of the endgame are making the king active in the endgame, putting the king in the opponent's territory. You should do that in the endgame. And pushing passed pawns or candidate pawns forward so you can promote them and then easily checkmate the opponent's king. Bye bye. That's it for today. Subscribe.